We have a number of people that are going to speak to the community choice aggregation, and I have first on the list Sean Marshall. Ms. Marshall.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Is this on? Can everybody hear me? There we go. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I also want to thank you very much for hosting this afternoon's session, for being here today to hear all of the various sides of this debate. My name is Sean Marshall. I am here today as the Vice Chairman of the Marin Energy Authority, a new joint powers agency supporting Marin's Community Choice Aggregation Program, which we call Marin Clean Energy, or NCE. I'm also a former mayor and council member for the City of Mill Valley, which is a member of the JPA, and I am the immediate past president of the League of California Cities North Bay Division. So I'll be speaking to you today with a couple of different hats on. My remarks today are really going to just touch on three particular areas. The good news, which is that I'll provide you with a brief update as to where we are with Marin Clean Energy and the progress we've made thus far. Followed by some bad news. What we see is really the bad news in terms of obstructionist tactics going on that fly in the face of the law as written with AB 117, and what we call the ugly. The good, the bad, and the ugly, and that's what's going to bring me to our position and some of our commentary on Prop 16. So allow me to just start by bringing you up to date. I think you all may be aware that in Marin County we've been studying our CCA opportunity for the last 7 years. We have retained incredible expertise to back us up on that. We have done several peer reviews, business modeling, legal analysis. I'm not going to bore you with all those details, but I can assure you that all of that backs up all the work that I'm going to be presenting to you today. So since this body, this commission, certified Marin Clean Energy's implementation plan in February, we have accomplished the following. We've secured over $2 million in startup financing and working capital. Some of that through private citizens, some of that through commercial loan. We've signed a 5-year contract with Shell Energy North America. And I want to just state publicly that Marin Clean Energy and the Marin Energy Authority fully understands that that is not a good public relations move. We really understand that. And we had to make a business choice, given the fact that our county and our future ratepayers expect us to make the least risky move possible in this area. So we ended up going with Shell North America for two reasons. One, they absolutely are able to offer us a price that is below PG&E's costs at double the renewable content that PG&E can currently offer. And we will be, I believe, signing an execution agreement with Shell very soon, in fact, hopefully in the next few days, and all of those rates will be public shortly. We have finally codified our service agreement with PG&E. To Commissioner Ryan's point, I will tell you that PG&E would like to think that they did that in full cooperation, and I will tell you that the delays and the teeth pulling were quite substantial to get that service agreement done. Nonetheless, it is done. We have made good on our commitment to provide a minimum 25% renewable mix within the Shell contract. All of that meets California certified renewable standards. There are no RECs in that. I believe somebody mentioned that as well. There are no RECs in what we are talking about, at no additional cost to our light green customers. We are making good on our commitment to offer a deep green product of 100% renewable content at just a 7% rate premium for Phase 2 customers. We are making good on our commitment to offer a net metering program that matches PG&E's with no annual cap. So in that way, we're actually exceeding what PG&E currently offers. And the best news of all is that we are set to go live to flip the switch to bring our first customers online Friday, May 7th, making Marin County the first jurisdiction in California to begin serving customers under a community choice aggregation law that was passed and supported by PG&E in 2002. So that's actually a good segue, I believe, to what I see as very bad news. The bad news is that there is at least one other community choice aggregator that might have beat Marin to the finish line, were it not in part for the resource-draining obstructionist tactics employed by the incumbent utility. Marin County owes the San Joaquin effort a great debt of gratitude. We watched, we listened, we learned, and we will be able to deliver. The bad news is that PG&E continues to wreak havoc in CCA communities. They're using slightly different tactics in Marin County, but the goal is the same. And the goal is to sow enough fear and confusion to, in essence, essentially kill the program. And we do not see that as fully cooperative by any means. The bad news is that PG&E has done really nothing to cooperate fully. Yes, we've been able to sign off on documents after much legal expense and consternation. But really, as you will see, and this is really only half of the material that's out there today, they are not cooperating, and they're not only not cooperating, they're doing it in broad daylight and without consequence. So just for today, this is a full-page ad that's been running in the Marin Independent Journal for the last 4 days. It may be in today's paper. I've not seen the paper. And let me just point out right here, there's lots of misstatements in this text, and we can go through this later, and we will staff. But this click-out form right here is not allowed for an opt-out procedure. PG&E knows full well, we discussed it, that it would be web and telephone-based, and they're still using clip-outs. We've asked them to stop. They haven't stopped. So, you know, I will not go through all the rest of these horrible, watch out, scary brochures, but let me assure you that PG&E has made sure that there's plenty of public debate, fear, and confusion in Marin County. We've heard PG&E ask this body to level the cost playing field by allowing the utility to lower its generation rates, which they do by transferring a greater percentage of costs to their transmission and distribution line items. That's been permissible. And what we are asking as community choice aggregators is that this same body help us level the legal and regulatory playing field in 3 specific ways. So I'm going to shift from bad news because I really can't stand it when I sit on your side of the dais when people come and complain and they offer no solutions. So we offer 3 recommendations and potential solutions going forward. The first is pretty basic. Please help us enforce the law. We are following the law, and we need your help in the other party also following the law that governs CCA. We ask that this commission publicly reaffirm your commitment to regulating the law by actively enforcing the rules of AB 117. And we ask that you enforce this body's 2005 decision, which prohibits obstructionist tactics and articulates the definition of full cooperation between CCAs and their partner IOUs. I believe you are working on that. We will look forward to seeing your resolution that I believe may be coming in April. Here's a big one. Please help us by strengthening the rules of this program, imposing stiffer penalties, and holding the various players accountable. We can read you chapter and verse about PG&E's hostile marketing practices in Marin County, the offering of backroom sweetheart deals supported by ratepayer money, threats of potentially expensive lawsuits that undermine the law and drain resources. That's what happened in San Joaquin. And gross misrepresentation of the facts that sow fear and confusion. Examples have all been articulated in our support of San Francisco's request to modify, which was submitted a couple of weeks ago. The bottom line is that the rules of cooperative engagement are broad, vague, and loosely interpreted, and thus PG&E can drive a truck right through them, and they do. To that end, MEA would very much appreciate the CPUC imposing a moratorium on PG&E's marketing and 501c4 practices until the petition to modify the definition of fully cooperate is decided by this commission. We very much appreciate you taking that interim step because the playing field in this regard is anything but level and anything but cooperative. In addition, the imposition of specific monetary penalties for such things as failure to execute the standard service agreement or confirm the amount of required bonds and deposits in a timely fashion would be helpful. After spending thousands of dollars in attorney's fees and countless hours working with your staff, we finally got these critical pieces done. But we believe that PG&E would not have held up the work so long if there were clear requirements and substantial penalties in place for non-compliance and delay tactics. Third, please help us by formalizing a process for dispute resolution. We have appreciated the informal attempts by CPUC staff to facilitate these key sticking points. We really have appreciated all of those efforts. But the recommended resolutions have largely been ignored by PG&E. We ask you to develop a specific and timely resolution process that will not require substantial legal fees to employ. We further ask that you re-empower your staff to resolve regulatory disputes and insist that PG&E work with staff just like everybody else does. PG&E's blatant disregard for staff when disputes arise seem to imply that they can get a different response from you, and I am quite certain that this body is in no way interested in the perception or anything close to it of special treatment for PG&E. And so PG&E needs to do what the staff asks it to do when you have empowered them to do so. So now third, I will turn our attention to Proposition 16. It is often called, on the other side of the coin, PG&E's Monopoly Protection Act. In my opinion, it is the worst kind of ballot box legislation we've seen in California for years. And I believe that there are many of us in this room who believe that ballot box abuse has gotten worse over the years, and this is just another example in today's times. You already know that Prop 16 is a direct hit on the ability of CCAs to come into being and on public utilities to actually operate and function successfully. Prop 16's exploitation of democracy, and I choose those words carefully, is an insult to everyone in this room who understands, to Commissioner Peavy's point of view, that a 2/3 vote requirement is a no vote that cedes control to the minority voter. You don't have to look anywhere but the state capitol to understand that the 2/3 vote requirement imposed on these kinds of things is not serving the California public well at all. And in fact, there are steps afoot, unfortunately, through ballot box legislation to change that voter threshold. So, you know, there are a couple of different issues to decouple here, but I think that the 2/3 vote requirement is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and I think PG&E needs to be called out on that issue. Prop 16 is so poorly drafted that it could literally require voter approval for the increase of a single customer. Its language is intentionally ambiguous, and if passed, we believe it'll end up in court and cost all of us in more expensive and unnecessary litigation. Many believe that Prop 16 will in fact harm a flourishing renewables market in California. One of the benefits of CCAs is that smaller suppliers may actually stand a chance when dealing with a smaller nonprofit public agency. And the tax-exempt bonding capacity of public utilities and CCAs is longstanding, has been managed appropriately at the local level, and will, we believe, stimulate the growth of renewables development in California. I believe this is the kind of development that we all want in our state. What you should also be aware of is that Prop 16 cuts at the heart of local government by impeding local land use decisions. This is a little different than the energy issue, but no less important. For example, local government may not be able to approve, let's say, an affordable housing project if that project requires annexation in order to be serviced by the local public utility. Indeed, there is analysis that says Prop 16 could actually dissuade governments from providing much-needed housing options in this state because a 2/3 vote requirement is difficult, if not impossible, to achieve, and public elections are expensive. This flies in the face of good public policy and responsible government. In fact, we feel that this is irresponsible public policy and irresponsible government. Prop 16, in our view, is so bad that it could be laughable were it not for its far-reaching and potentially serious, long-standing consequences should it pass. So I'll just wrap up by saying that community choice aggregation has been successfully operating in Ohio and Massachusetts for years. And for the first time, Marin Clean Energy will make that a reality in the state of California. So in the spirit of AB 117 and meaningful energy solutions for our state, the MEA respectfully requests the Commission's active and ongoing involvement in clarifying the rules, codifying a productive partnership with PG&E. We do not want this to be an uncomfortable marriage. It's turning out to be an uncomfortable marriage. We need a productive partnership. And we would like your help in diffusing the potentially lethal aspects and impacts of Prop 16. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. And actually, you went a little long, but I assume that your colleagues, you worked this out ahead of time. So, Ms. Mueller, Teresa Mueller.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Commissioners. We appreciate the time you've taken to have this hearing and the time of your staff in setting it up. San Francisco has been providing electric service to city facilities for decades and has also implemented a CCA program. I'm going to urge you to oppose Proposition 16, and I'm going to offer you 3 reasons why you should. The main one is that it is antithetical to the Commission's most strongly stated objectives and to the law and policy adopted by California and federal authorities over many recent years. Prop 16 is a step backward in efforts to create a competitive electric market. Federal and state law and Commission policies all favor a robustly competitive market. In California, customers have spent billions of dollars in the effort to create such a market. Much of that money was paid directly to PG&E. The Commission is still pursuing creation of that competitive market by, for example, looking at the reinstatement of direct access to provide more competition. POUs have been competing with IOUs since the beginning of utility service. Local government entities have been the most consistent source of competition in the electric delivery business. Prop 16 is anti-competitive. It's aimed at disabling a whole class of competitors. The Commission should acknowledge that and oppose it. The second thing, Prop 16 will make it harder to reduce electric rates in California, and I know this is one of your chief objectives. POU rates in California are on average 25% less than IOU rates. Local entities cannot get away with charging higher rates than IOUs. The direct pressure of local constituents means that local elected officials have a strong incentive to keep rates down. Prop 16 is a direct attempt by PG&E to get rid of lower price competition. That will not lead to lower rates or better service from IOUs. Just to illustrate this point further, PG&E stated in its 2008 annual report that as customers and public officials evaluated their energy options, PG&E faced a risk of losing load if its rates were higher than the alternatives. Instead of putting its resources toward ensuring better rates and service, PG&E has decided to try and limit the alternatives. Third reason, Prop 16 will make it harder to develop renewable resources in California. I appreciate the statements of PG&E's representative that that is not the intention of the measure, but the language of the measure will play out, as has already been mentioned, probably in litigation, and the language is not clear. And we believe it will be problematic for renewables. Some of the reasons why. If California is going to meet the aggressive goals for renewable energy, all segments have to be engaged. Many POUs have responded to local pressure for sustainable energy by investing in renewables. Those investments will likely not be economic if public entities can't develop load to use their clean energy resources. The revenues from providing electric service are key if public entities are to develop renewables. In San Francisco, revenues from electric service have been used, for example, to put solar, to help put solar on 815 rooftops, with another 330 rooftops planned, as well as on city facilities. Similarly, those revenues have been used for energy efficiency, clean fuel vehicles, and other sustainable energy projects. Local governments do not have extra money for such projects, particularly these days. The loss of the opportunity to develop electric service revenues will be significant in development of renewables. The Commission should oppose Prop 16 just like it opposed Prop 7 back in 2008, and for many of the same reasons. I looked at your press release from when you voted to oppose Prop 7, and one of the things you said is that it would impede the state's goals for renewable energy. Prop 16 would impede that goal and several others. And to paraphrase the language of President Peavy in the press release, the state's competitive energy policies should be established with a finer instrument than the blunt hammer of a ballot measure. If Prop 7 was a hammer, Prop 16 is a wrecking ball. You should acknowledge that and oppose it. And your press release is almost written. Thank you.
Thank you for citing my remarks of a couple of years ago. I stand by them today.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to speak today at this important debate. My name is Hisham Tel. I am the Deputy General Manager at Merced Irrigation District. Merced Irrigation District, I'm going to call Merced ID, is located in northern San Joaquin Valley, and it encompasses the city of Merced, Atwater, and Livingston, and the towns of Winton, Plaza, Tracy, Franklin, Beechwood, and Marin. There are approximately 150,000 residents within the district boundary. The district provides water supply, storm drainage, park and recreation, flood control, and generates hydroelectric power, in addition to retail electric services. Beginning in 1996, Merced ID began providing retail electric services as authorized by the Irrigation District Law. Merced ID serves approximately 7,400 customers, and the district customer base is still growing despite the economic downturn, thanks to a combination of competitive electric rates and reliable service. Public power has been a lawful alternative for California's energy consumers for decades. We think choice and competition in electric service is good for everyone. It forces all suppliers to focus on providing reliable service to satisfied customers at reasonable prices. In the Merced ID case, we truly believe that Merced budding electric system in the 1990s shored up PG&E's system and increased its reliability by shedding some of its load, especially in the city of Livingston, which had not a good reliability record at the time. In fact, some industrial businesses chose Merced ID over PG&E, not for rate, but for reliability. In our view, by requiring public power providers to obtain a 2/3 vote before spending public monies to start or expand service, Proposition 16 improperly enhances the IOU's monopoly position and limits customer choice to the detriment of POUs and their customer, and even the investor-owned utilities customer. No public agency between Oregon and Mexico will be more negatively impacted by Proposition 16 than the Merced Irrigation District. We're not talking about creating a new public utility or an existing public utility. Because nearly the entire area where Merced provides electric service overlaps with the IOU's service territory, which happens to be PG&E. So Merced competes head-to-head with PG&E for customers. This means Proposition 16 would have the following impacts on Merced ID. Under Proposition 16, if a new or existing barber shop in the town of Atwater desired to connect to Merced ID's distribution system, 2/3 border approval would be required throughout the area where Merced ID provides service, which includes the above-mentioned 3 cities, 5 towns, and other urban areas. And what happens if Merced ID receives 50 sporadic requests for service over a year? Does Merced ID has to run 50 elections, or do we tell the customers to postpone their business plans until we have enough customers to run an election? The customers will turn to our competitor by default. Merced ID was chosen for these projects because it is easy to do business with a small district due to its small bureaucracy. The Legislative Analyst's Office has suggested that no lights will be shut off as a result of Proposition 16. Well, I beg to differ. Merced ID is authorized by law to serve an area outside of its jurisdictional boundary. What happens if a new customer in that area desires Merced ID service, but two-thirds of the voters do not agree on that expansion? That customer would have to pay a substantial amount of money for a significant extension of the investor-owned utility line to connect to its grid. The cost may preclude the customer from turning on the lights. While it is possible that Merced ID could obtain two-thirds voter approval in 1 or 2 elections, voters surely will tire of that process. A frozen or shrinking Merced electric system will lead to higher power rates for our customers, which in turn could cause the demise of the district electric service department. The proponents of Proposition 16 say it is supposed to protect customers from risky business. Merced ID owns and it is in the process of acquiring hydroelectric, biogen, and wind power that would peak at close to 120 megawatt by 2014. The peak demand on Merced ID's existing retail electric distribution system is just under 100 megawatt. We have been operating at no risk. If Proposition 16 passes, $100 million in sunken asset cost could be at risk between now and 2014. Ms. Leone stated a minute ago that the proposition is aimed at preventing substantive sums, the risking substantive sums of money. And I would like to know, what is substantive? Is it $5,000? It's $10,000? It's $100,000? It's a matter of connecting minutes in our case. The proposition supposedly aims at protecting the taxpayers. Merced ID's Electric Service Department does not collect taxes. The district cannot lien properties for unpaid accounts. They are turned, like any private business, to a collection agency. We have other significant concerns regarding PG&E's use of the initiative process to pursue its objectives. Against the history of competitive issues, the legislature adopted AB 2638 in 2000 to memorialize an agreement between Merced Irrigation District and Modesto Irrigation District and PG&E, finally resolving competitive issues between the parties. We are very troubled that Proposition 16 violates the clear intent of AB 2638. We are concerned that Proposition 16 fails to disclose the multiple opportunities consumers already have by law to vote or otherwise influence POU proposal to start or extend service, falsely implying that consumers currently don't have a say. For example, when a public-owned utility seeks through formation or expansion to provide electric service in an area where the IOUs is authorized to provide service, voter approval is required, which is the PU code 56129. POU formations and expansions are subject to review by LAFCO throughout a public process. If sufficient protest is received, voter approval is required. Certain irrigation districts that seek to expand electric service must first obtain a CPUC finding that the expansion is in the public best interest. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, the governing bodies of the POEs are elected and answerable to consumers, unlike IOU's board of directors. Our consumers are our stakeholders. IOU's ratepayers don't get to vote on IOU's rate increases or board of directors. In our case, and in my case, and I'm a PG&E customer, the only opportunity to provide at my home, the only opportunity I have to provide input regarding rates is by participating in a formal and complicated CPUC process or traveling to San Francisco for board meetings. Or customers can pick up the phone and call their elected board members. We are also concerned about vote dilution. If 1/3 plus 1 of the consumers votes for the proposition election, that means the minority will win, which has been just covered a minute ago. I'm almost there, sir. We think it's inappropriate for one company to take advantage of our political process to put forth a measure, fund the measure, and clothe it as taxpayer protection device, solely to consolidate that company's monopoly stronghold and eliminate competition and customer choice. We want California consumers to get all the relevant facts to understand how this measure will affect the electric service and decide how to vote on this important measure. The PUC have imposed certain tariffs on our customers to maintain fairness, even though we disagreed with their logic and approach. Therefore, within the spirit of the PUC Commission in maintaining fairness and managing the IOUs to the best of California citizens, we ask that the PUC ensure a level playing field among electric service providers by passing a resolution opposing this proposition, number one. Number two, consider taking steps to ensure that the IOU's ratepayers have the same opportunities to have a say in IOU's rate making that the POU customers currently have. Thank you. Sorry for the long.
Thank you very much.
My name is Paul Hauser. Paul Gooser. I'm the Electric Utility Director for the City of Reading. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. PG&E in testimony today and previously advocating for Proposition 16 has asserted that publicly owned utilities are not capable of handling the complexities of the electric power business. They build on this assertion to state that somehow this incompetence brings with it a great risk to ratepayers that might be left with financial mess to clean up after a CCA or a municipalization effort fails. Therefore, I guess, and their argument is this risk justifies a 2/3 double voting requirement for the formation of any new publicly owned utility or even the extension of electric service by an existing publicly owned utility. I'd like to share some statistics about Reading's publicly owned utility that I believe counter this argument, and these statistics, I might add, are indicative of publicly owned utilities. They are not unique to Reading's public utility. Reading is a medium-sized city with approximately 90,000 residents. It's owned and operated as publicly owned electric utility since 1921. Reading Electric Utility reliably serves these 90,000 residents with a resource portfolio that is 64% carbon-free. We have a peak load a little above 250 megawatts. By any measure, we're tiny compared to PG&E. But we also do the things that they do. We have transmission and distribution assets and generation assets. We participate in wholesale markets. Currently, to look at the rate picture, currently Reading collects about $100 million per year in retail revenues from our entire customer groups, $100 million annually. We run the numbers, and if we were to apply PG&E's current rate structure to our customers, that number would be $140 million annually, or an additional $40 million extracted from our customers and the community and exported to shareholders that live all over the world. PG&E mentioned they mentioned unemployment and economic impacts. I can tell you an additional $40 million extracted from the Reading community would have a chilling effect on our economy and unemployment rate. Another area where I think municipal utilities excel is reliability. Just looking back over the last 5 years, the average Reading customer has experienced less than 27 minutes of outage time per year. And I know you look at these things for investor-owned utilities. Over that same time period, the average PG&E customer has experienced more than 260 minutes, or more than 9 times the Reading average customer rate. If we're looking at this as a risky endeavor or that municipal utilities are somehow incompetent to be in the business, I would imagine PG&E customers would love to have this kind of incompetence. On December 1st, 2009, Reading City Council passed a resolution unanimously opposing Proposition 16. One of the primary reasons for Reading City Council opposing Proposition 16 is the economic impact this proposed constitutional amendment would have on the city. Just a few months ago, an East Coast manufacturing company began to consider building a new manufacturing plant in Reading. The plant, as proposed, would create 600 new jobs. The company has said that Reading is an ideal location to expand its business because of Reading's new Stillwater Business Park, which is a 700-acre, fully entitled facility that the city developed. The company's CEO is quoted as saying, "Reading's electric utility, its pricing, its reliability, and our confidence in them for delivering products and services are major factors in why we are seriously considering locating to Reading. If Proposition 16 passes, it would be extremely unlikely that Reading would ever develop another Stillwater Business Park." Thank you again for having me here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser.
Good afternoon, President PD, members of the Commission. My name is Kevin Miller, and I'm the Assistant General Manager for the City of Riverside Public Utilities. As a public employee of the City of Riverside, I'm providing testimony today only as to the possible impacts of Proposition 16 on the city. Riverside Public Utilities is the 5th largest municipally owned utility in California. We serve approximately 315,000 people through 100,000 electric meters. Riverside Public Utilities was established in 1895, making us one of the most established utilities in California. On March 2nd, 2010, our local governing board, the Riverside City Council, voted to oppose Proposition 16. Unlike many Southern California municipally owned utilities, Riverside is not landlocked. We currently have about 62 square miles of unincorporated area within our sphere of influence as defined by LAFCO, the Local Agency Formation Commission. We also have 2.3 square miles of territory that has annexed to the city through the LAFCO election process that has not yet been converted to electric service by the city of Riverside. Riverside Public Utilities was established by city charter. The operations of the utility, including its ability to borrow money, spend money, and raise revenue, are regulated by the charter. Amendments to the charter are subject to majority vote elections of the citizens. This ballot measure would preempt that local control and require the citizens of Riverside to conduct special elections to serve newly annexed territory. The Riverside City Clerk has estimated the cost of a special election in Riverside at $285,000. Currently, Riverside Public Utilities process for annexations is through the LAFCO majority vote protest hearing process of the annexed territory. One of the attractions of annexation to the city of Riverside is favorable electric service rates offered by the utility. Riverside's electric rates in general are 10% lower than Southern California Edison's rates. The cost to serve newly annexed areas is outweighed by the additional revenue to the utility, which benefits all of our ratepayers. Under the ballot measure, an estimated 550 households in Riverside would be subject to a special election before we could commence municipal utility service. In conclusion, we believe that the ballot measure will place an undue burden on Riverside Public Utilities, its customers, and the current and future residents of our community, a burden which is not required of the investor-owned utilities.
Royal Dutch Shell or Shell Energy appears in many of our proceedings here at the California Public Utilities Commission, and their characterization may not be fair in my honest evaluation. We see them in many proceedings. So Marin County selection of this company under your community or your CCA, your Marin Authority, or Marin Power Authority, is by no means any different than any of the other power purchase agreements and other instruments that come before this commission. But in reference to Shell Energy's role with Marin County, would they are going to be your power purchasing entity along with the procurement committee that you have established under the establishment of the authority?
So let me decouple those. Yes, they are our energy services provider for a period of 5 years. They are not in any way a committee, so I'm not.
Well, I noticed that you do have a committee. You have a committee process in place.
We have a contracts committee in place of members of our board, but that does not include Shell North America. And they're part of the conversation as we have developed the contract, but there is no ongoing committee for that.
Will they be selling you their power or simply purchasing power in the power trading or power marketplace?
So we will have specifics on all of that as soon as the contract is executed. But
so you haven't executed your contract?
We have confirmed the contract. We have not executed yet. We are waiting for the best pricing available. We were also waiting to pass a legal hurdle that we did just the other night that ensured that PG&E would not file suit. We did not want to execute on a contract until we were sure that that threat had been removed. So to go back to your question, I'm sorry. So Shell North America has the renewable, the content or the power in its pipeline already. So it is not, this is not going out and now purchasing on our behalf. It's already identified and already ready to go for us within their pipeline.
I see. And so they could they be on both sides of the transaction? Could they be selling you their power and also working with your committee in choosing that power over other over other bids?
You know, I don't know how to answer that question. I can certainly get you the answer to that.
Okay.
I'm not sure of that technicality.
Great, I appreciate that.
Sure.
If you could submit it. And that's ultimately that's the choice of your authority. So I don't think that's even within our jurisdiction to evaluate. The other comment and question I think I should state is I took the hold on the resolution for the last meeting, which is in the public record, and I think this hearing has clearly benefited us in hearing more about the issues involving what you're describing as the obstructionist tactics of PG&E. One concern that I had when I read the resolution was the notion of PG&E not being able to have contact with their customers. I think a big part of any utility, even as your authority, as we presume will be established, is that ability to educate customers, to communicate with customers about the choices they make in a multitude of services that are provided by the utility. How can there be a level playing field or a bilateral quiet period, for lack of a better term? Because it appears that, from my reading the resolution, you're imposing restrictions on the IOU's ability to communicate with their customers. And my concern, obviously, is I don't want to see any kind of chilling effect on speech or information. So what is your authority proposing as to how that process can remain level and fair?
It's my understanding that our staff and legal counsel have been working with CPUC staff on the specifics of that. But I think it's very important to clarify that I don't believe there is a withholding of customer information. I do know that there is a cooling off period so that PG&E will be supplied the list of phase one customers, I believe, in about 2 weeks. Again, I want to stay away from specifics because I'm not on staff. But they will have full access to that list within a couple of weeks, and you can be assured that the playing field will be tipped over yet again, because they've already sunk millions into outreach to customers with the things that I've shown you. Those are to all Marin residents, and we believe that they will spend many more millions on direct outreach to phase one customers.
And in your materials, something that I've read, the statement is made that they're using ratepayer funds to fund this, but you heard a statement made by I think it was, maybe this is testimony that's coming forward. Actually, it's not by your group, it's by someone from the San Joaquin Irrigation District. But in the case of Marin County, is it your concern that ratepayer funds are being used in in this propagation?
So, I cannot answer that for our board. Others may be able to. What I can say is that we've been concerned that ratepayer funds have been used early on with some of the special deals that were offered by PG&E to specific cities to either stay out of CCA when it was formed or to then remove themselves.
Could you describe what a special deal is?
Excuse
my ignorance here.
Sure. It's all articulated in a letter that was sent by Don Wise, our executive director. I'll just give you one example. We believe, and there's evidence, that PG&E offered the city of Novato this would be in the fall of 2008.
And they're not a part of your
They are not,
collective.
because the JPA votes that came through happened in December of 2008 to form Marin Energy Authority. And then in the fall of 2008, PG&E offered Novato a sum of $50,000 to basically hire a sustainability director to take care of some of their sustainability issues in exchange for not joining the JPA, which we do see as clearly obstructionist.
Was that decision made by the appropriate tribunal or powers of the city municipality of Novato?
Not that I'm aware, well, I mean, no, I don't believe that ever was on the agenda, and I also am quite certain that that offer was never extended to any other city in the county of Marin.
But the city of Novato opted to take this offer.
I don't believe they took it, actually, because everybody cried foul, and I believe there may be an investigation afoot looking into these allegations. No, they did not.
I'll continue on. Ms. Muller, regarding, you're representing, and I'm sorry, I can't see your entire sign here. So you're with the city attorney's office of San Francisco. And has San Francisco executed a contract on the order of what the Marin Power Authority, I apologize if I got the name incorrect, have they executed a contract with an entity to oversee the procurement of power?
Commissioner, we are currently negotiating such a contract.
Okay, so you're also in, so both of these entities are in negotiations. Okay.
We are.
Okay.
We're done. We actually agreed to a contract. We just need to execute it now.
Okay, so, well.
And that's a price issue.
Okay, well, once upon a time, I practiced law, and if I'm not mistaken, the contract is when it's executed, correct?
There's a technicality that allows us to execute after approval of the contract. And that's the decoupling that I'm discussing.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Commissioner Ryan?
Yes, Mr. Marshall, this brochure which was handed to us, is this something that's been mailed out to everybody in the MEA service territory?
No, that brochure was produced back in 2009 as one of our early marketing pieces, and that's just been available at every public meeting that we go to and all that. We have not had any budget for mailings until just recently when we were able to secure startup financing. So we finally have a budget for marketing and communications, and we're just now getting started with that. We have just done our first mailing to phase 1 customers at the end of last week.
Okay. I'd just like to briefly...
Excuse me, our second one.
Go ahead. I'd just like to briefly get your perspective on a statement we heard in the first panel that only by having an election with a 2/3 vote requirement would there be essentially sufficient public vetting of a measure like the creation of the MEA, and that the sort of the current opt-out process that's underway really only provides very superficial public discourse. Can you characterize for us sort of the extent of the public discussion that's occurred that makes it, that puts the residents of Marin County in a position to make an informed choice here, just as an example of what could occur absent the passage of Prop 16?
Sure. So I can comment, this very issue came up in the city of Mill Valley, and in the city over the last 2.5 years, we've had somewhere between 8 and 12 public hearings, public workshops, special sessions, community forums of every ilk. We've also had newsletter articles, special mailings, and the like, and that is going on in every jurisdiction who's a member of MEA. In addition, MEA has sponsored several public workshops where we have invited PG&E to enter into the discussion and just have a debate on the methodology of CCA. And that's been going on for a couple of years. For more specifics, your staff can pull down the probably full-page, single-space list of public events at www.marincleanenergy.info, but it's all posted.
Thank you.
Just a couple of brief questions, and this is to both Marin and San Francisco. Is it your contention that Shell Trading can buy, or do you believe they can buy renewable energy cheaper than PG&E?
I believe that what we've asked for in our contract in terms of renewable content, they've been able to deliver at a price that is less expensive than what has been delivered by PG&E for a term of 5 years.
Good. And where does this energy come from, since I'm not aware of them having any significant renewable generating resources?
So this is what I really had hoped to be able to unveil today. Once that execution document, no, but in the next few days, you're going to have a complete list of exactly where that energy is sourced.
We'll see it. And any comment from San Francisco?
I don't believe we know that yet. We don't know the price. And I think what we're balancing off is, the amount of renewables we're going to get and the quality of it with the price.
I think, though, that San Francisco has indicated that it's possible that the cost may be higher, but that alone is not necessarily an impediment to where you want to go.
I think that's correct.
I don't have any other questions, other I'll just make a brief comment that for Paul and Kevin and all of you, that I understand, your rates. There's the Marin Energy Authority put out a chart showing that, muni rates versus non-muni rates, PG&E, the data is a little dated, 2005, but that yesterday's LA Times had a story that DWP, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, is going to have to increase their rates by 2.7 cents a kilowatt hour, which is a big number. And it would put on this chart them right up with Edison and all. And it's because they have lagged in not building customers for renewable energy over the past several years. I mean, you could, of course, the city council has to approve all this and all that, but it is a kind of a cautionary note about the cost of renewables in this. I just caution all of us here.